Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing well. And how about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the full moon from May 3rd and how it can be used to jumpstart your union with the divine. By pointing out the two T-squares that are included in the lunation, we will discuss the benefits of this cosmic tsunami and how to use it to generate momentum. The moon opposition Sun square to Jupiter and Mercury opposition Saturn square Neptune is useful energy if you can harness it and give it direction. Fire can warm your home and it can burn it down, two different uses of the same energy. Desire is the fire for human behavior, and it can make you or break you. So, Swami, what a great description. Let's get us started.
Yeah, the whole thing of desire is such an important variable when you're trying to structure your life, because desire is what gives everything energy. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. If people have a tendency to get whatever it is that they desire, and, you know, the bigger the desire, the more energy you have. It's like if you've got a small amount of fire, you've got a little bit of heat. If you've got a lot of fire, you've got a lot of heat. So when you're dealing with a full moon that's in Scorpio, which is the key phrase for that zodiacal sign is I desire, it's a really good opportunity to get in touch with, you know, what's important to me. What is it that's motivating me? Because, again, everything is going to revolve around whatever it is that we desire.
So I now know that Scorpio has to do with the 8th house, and as you just said, it means I desire death, rebirth, renewal, transformation. So does the full moon kind of amp up the, not just the energies, but the possibilities of the 8th house, and so we should be focusing our intentions and thoughts into that particular house at this period of time?
Yeah, that's helpful. You know, getting behind the biosphere of energy that's available to you at a given time is always to your advantage. You know, it's kind of like when the wind is at your back. You know, a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, it usually assists you, as opposed to if you're going against that force, you know, at any given time. So the more understanding you have of this biosphere of energy, that's one of the reasons why I like astrology, because it does give me a general overview of, you know, what's available at a given time. And then using your yoga practice, because you really do have to have the ability to throttle, regulate, and manage psychic energy. To be able to control how you think is really of the utmost importance. It's kind of like, you know, when you're out on a sailboat, it's really helpful not only to know which way the wind is blowing, but you also have to know how to sail, which means, you know, use that energy that's available to you at a given time. And so the astrology just kind of gives us the direction of the wind, but it's your yoga practice that gives you the skill that you need to be able to utilize that biosphere of energy.
In our Theory 1 class last night, we were kind of talking about, when you had said earlier, when there's a will, there's a way. But do these energies have that kind of an effect on us as physical bodies? Like, does it kind of give us that inner push to want to become whole?
Well, to answer your question, it can. It won't do it for you. That oftentimes the variables that most of us are struggling with is oftentimes the conflict between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual aspects of our makeup. And oftentimes transits like this, especially with squares and oppositions that we're showing here, that can bring what is oftentimes referred to as problems in people's lives. And the problems aren't necessarily due to that biosphere of energy. It's the simple fact that we're trying to do something in a way that it's not able to be done. So being able to understand, first of all, that the variables that we use in Kriya Yoga are a person's level of consciousness and their degree of awareness. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be determined by basically what people desire. It's one of the things that we say, that those of us that desire particles, things that are visible and tangible, will be of a lower animal nature. Those of us that desire waves, which would be the things in reality that are invisible but tangible, those people will be of an equally low human nature. But those of us that desire the void or the nothing, those people will be of a higher divine nature. And so looking at a person's chart or looking at where the planets are in the sky doesn't determine that. But where you start with is, what do I desire? What is it that's important to me? What is it that motivates me? And then that will kind of give you some clues as to where you are, your level of consciousness, your degree of awareness, based on, that simple cross-reference. So if you desire duality, which is fear and limitation, that's what you become. If you desire truth and wholeness, that's what you become.
So does this full moon, is that going to amp up whatever it is that we desire, whatever those three natures that you just talked about? Is that going to amplify somebody's desire in whatever those three categories?
Well, to answer your question, that's what it did, because the full moon is over. It's not something that we are, talking about preparing for. This is more. This today is more about reflecting on, what did I do Sunday. Like we did full moon mantra on Sunday, which to me is just an excellent way of attuning yourself to that biosphere of energy and working with all of the different facets of your mind, working with repetition for absorption. But the intention of mantra is so that we can resonate to this higher frequency. So we're employing all of the necessary strategies. Hopefully everybody that was participating with that, that their underlying inner subjective state was that they were training their minds to look for the void or the nothing and conditioning their bodies to use this as a symbol to, for validation. Mm-hmm. In essence, what we're trying to do is become addicted to this life force, to become addicted to this thing they called God, to love God, to desire the void or the nothing. Those are what I would consider to be the instructions that came out of our religious communities, when I think people were closer to an understanding of what they were designed to do. Because the changes that take place are quite significantly noticeable. You're a completely different person when you desire particles or waves than you are when you are a person that desires the void or the nothing.
I see what you're saying now, obviously, because the full moon was a few days ago. So now our responsibility or job, if you will, is to have an awareness as to what we were thinking, what we were doing, and how did we use that full moon to our best advantage. So I understand that. What I do want to ask you is, when we talk about desire, does it have to go in that particular order? Like, can you desire particles and then desire the void, or do you have to kind of go through the three stages like you would, like we talk about the caterpillar to the butterfly?
Well, to answer your question, you don't have to go from desiring particles to desiring waves to desiring the void. You can go from desiring particles to desiring the void, but you are still going to have to go through the chrysalis. Because that is that's what we talked about last week. There is this rebirthing of the body in this other energy field. And you have to change the pattern of your body. You have to reprogram the reward circuits in your brain. You have to change these neurological pathways. That would come under the whole thing of the chrysalis phase in development. Mm-hmm. And then once you've internalized the image, then the changes will reveal themselves. But one of the things that you want to really be clear about is that it is physics. That it's of the utmost importance that you feel connected to the life force, that you don't just think that you're spiritual, mm-hmm. because probably one of the biggest barriers to this thing they call liberation or enlightenment or illumination is when we make the shift from particles to waves. Because you've made a change, but you are still drawing from an energy field that is limiting. And it's not going to give you what the books are telling you that you're supposed to get. So then what happens oftentimes is that we're identifying this lesser experience with this true mystical state of being. Mm-hmm. And it's not that easy, I don't think, to troubleshoot.
And again, we were talking last night, you had made the comment in the Theory 1 class that we have to be careful about the intellectualism, and we can go through this path of knowledge, and we can talk to these people who know a lot about being spiritual, but then it comes down to what do you know, and then what are you doing? So you have to make this leap from knowing to doing, or you're just, what you say, you're just lost in this whole sense of intellectualism.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's why we really emphasize the physics of spirituality. And we really try and simplify it, so that you're very clear that on what it is that you desire, what it is that I'm using to validate myself, what is it that I'm using to produce the feeling in my body that I'm happy, because the return on the effort is noticeable. And if, like I say, we don't come in with any preconceived understanding of what it's going to look like, when I now desire the void or the nothing. So that's where good instruction is helpful, and having a clear understanding of how this can go wrong, and what are the signposts. What is the evidence procedure? What are the things that I would be looking for? And that's what, like we talk about, use what you need to produce the feeling you're happy.
I have a great question for you, but I think what we're going to do is I'm going to hold off on that question so we can hear a word from our sponsors. So listeners, we will return with you shortly.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Kriya Yoga Series 1 live classes and videos. Get your arms around the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga.
The intention of why we practice is to embody the spirit, to feel connected to the life force.
Kriya Yoga Asana live classes and videos. A cosmically engineered system of exercises to initiate apotheosis. A system of exercises engineered for dining and dancing at the Cosmic Ballroom. Kriya Yoga Series 2 live classes and videos. A practice in open form designed to facilitate positive growth of consciousness. Get your Labyrinth video.
I find the positive side of this is it pulls a lot of things together.
Kriya Yoga Mantra and Meditation. With repetition comes absorption. Pray on Prana and become divine.
At the same time, we all have a unique talent and gift to give back to the universe.
Private session. The mysteries of the universe have always been handed down verbally from teacher to student. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, my question is, we talked about desire, and then last night in class we were talking about this motivation or inner motivation. So what's the difference between desiring the void and this motivation to try to get to wanting to have this desire? Because I think that's a stumbling block for a lot of people about desiring something when they don't know what's going to happen if they get it, and then trying to turn that into a motivation to get there.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with that is kind of like what it says in the Bible, be careful for what you ask for. Because that's probably the biggest problem is what it is that we're asking for oftentimes. And a lot of us are asking for things that are tangible and visible, or invisible and tangible. And so we wind up and we get them. And then when we do, we're still in this cycle of death and rebirth. We're still in this realm of suffering and decay. So it becomes this psychological sand trap. So with regard to a yoga practice, or this Kriya Yoga practice that we teach, it's of the utmost importance that somebody knows ahead of time to start asking for the void or the nothing. To know ahead of time what it is that you are looking to internalize. And then, like what we were talking about last night, because you can't just do it intellectually, that we're all codependent, we all have needs, that our bodies need something that they can sink their teeth into for validation. We're a basic primal organism. And remember, your body has all the power. And that's where breath becomes a very powerful tool, because even though air is invisible but tangible, there's a direct relationship between your number one life-sustaining force, thought, and your number two life-sustaining force, breath. And so that link between those two, if you start changing how you think, and you start elevating breath to a position of importance that it warrants in your value system, now you're starting to affect changes, with your number one life-sustaining force. You're changing how you think. Then everything else is all going to be contingent upon what we call bad habits. Am I thinking right? Am I breathing right? Am I hydrated? Have I eliminated the foods that will produce cravings and disturbances? And then the final aspect of that is, am I exercising right? And once you start to employ a game plan that includes all of these strategies and techniques, then provided that all your ducks are in order, then you should almost immediately start to see results. And the results, initially is that I'm happy. I'm having a good day. And it's all based on the simple fact that I have what I need. That the forces that are really important to me are intact, which should, on some level, translate that the availability of your next breath becomes your source of joy, becomes, your symbol that is associated with your peak experience feeling. And that's one thing when you're trying to do that intellectually. It's another thing when you have completely internalized it. Change the reward circuits in the brain. Change these neurological pathways.
I have learned throughout my retail management career there's a saying that we used to say, and it was, it takes 30 days to make a behavior into a habit, to get something to be habit forming. So if we start today and the three words that you always say, put God first, and everything that we do and everything that we think, if we put God first, then we could assume that in 30 days we could make some leaps into our spiritual practice.
Yeah, provided that your image of the word God is not, it's not an imaginary image of some human, superhuman, cosmic puppeteer. Because remember, that's going to be astral. That will come under the realms of energy, waves. Right? Because the whole thing to being spiritual is that it isn't magic, but it's physics. And reality is multidimensional. So two of the dimensions of reality are going to be problematic. Nothing intrinsically evil with them, but it's kind of, like what we say, if you have a combustion engine, if you have a chainsaw and you want to cut trees down and there are 3 containers in the room, and one has water, one has apple juice, and the other one has gas. It's of the utmost importance to put the right substance in that chainsaw. I mean, and it's almost the same way with regard to this human experience of spirituality. It's what energy field do I desire is really going to determine where is my practice going to leave me? What are the changes that I can expect to happen? Because just like with the chainsaw, if you put the water in, it won't even start up. If you put apple juice in, it won't start up. And what use to you is a chainsaw that doesn't start up? But that, I think, is part of, like what we were talking about, part of the human problem is we don't know what this human mind-body complex looks like when it starts up. You know, so we're so accustomed to using the chainsaw without starting it up that we think that that's how it's supposed to be. And then, of course, we've got this whole aspect of society that is designed to actually continue to encourage us and feel good about the fact that we are trying to cut trees down with a chainsaw without starting it up. So that becomes a whole other realm, you know, another layer that we of what in yoga they call avidya, ignorance, that you have to try and muddle through. But if you can bypass all of the trial and error and really kind of understand what it is that we're trying to do, when we say we want to be a whole person, and that's going to require me to separate from an energy field that is limiting and reattach to an energy field that will give me the return I want, then you've got a better chance.
It is unfortunate that there's a lot of spiritual messages out there, you know, saying that you can achieve these levels of consciousness and getting spirit in your body without the purification process. And it's just unfortunate. We just saw a movie about that not too long ago. And like you said, it's this whole avidya is just across the board in all the wakes of life, even in the spiritual communities. Yeah,
that's pretty obvious, and it is. But look at the state of the world. But then the other thing is that I also look at the simple fact that, you know, we do have the information. So now it's a question of creating the movement. And that's like what you've been talking about, is getting people involved in what we're doing. You know, so if you're hearing what it is that we're saying and it sparks some window of interest, then you have a responsibility to try it, you know, to just experiment and see if it does bring about a difference. But the ones that just dismiss it, you know, that, again, that's just another barrier. You know, it's your resistance to stay with what's safe, familiar, comfortable, and known. And that's part of our message, is to try and encourage people to recognize that you're in the realms of suffering and decay. You know, you're on a sinking ship. It's to your advantage to try and get off of that.
Talked about, you know, if you like what you're hearing, you know, move forward. And if you like what you're hearing on Blog Talk Radio, you know, do the world a favor and, you know, like it on Facebook and share it so your friends and their friends you can click in as well. And just not only that, all it takes is one click, you know, to save the world. I mean, think about it in this day and age with the social media. You never know what could possibly happen. So again, listeners, I want to invite you to visit the website, follow us on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook. Don't forget to like us whenever you can and share. And also available all the online classes that are also available to you as well. Be sure to tune in next week. We have a great show planned. We're going to be celebrating National Prayer Day, so that's going to be really fun. So any other final thoughts or comments, Swami, before we close?
No, I'd just like to invite people to join us and start taking classes and experience some of the benefits that we're talking about with these practices that we do teach. And wish everybody a good day. Namaste, and I'll give it back to you.
Well, thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.